Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining in for today's monthly webinar. Today we're taking a look at the mobile check-in and checkout in RoomKey PMS. So the outline for today's webinar, we're going to start with some introductions, then we'll dive right into our topic and define what is the mobile check-in and checkout application. We'll look at why it is used, who uses it, and then we'll jump right into a live demonstration of how to use the mobile module inside RoomKey. From there, we'll discuss when you can start using the module, and we'll wrap up today's webinar with a summary and an open Q&A session. So starting right along with some introductions, my name is Tasha Leclerc. I'm a trainer and implementation specialist with RoomKey PMS since 2015. And joining me today, I do have our Director of Customer Experience, Mr. William Tam. He's been with RoomKey since 2014, and prior to that, also worked in hospitality and food and beverage for 10 years. Now, since we've, both Will and I have worked with RoomKey, been using the product for about 7 to 8 years, just wanted to open up the floor and see how long you've been using RoomKey, if you're brand new to RoomKey PMS as a software, or if you've been using it for quite some time. So on screen right now, I have just launched a poll. You can interact with that poll on your screen and let us know how long you've been using RoomKey, if it's less than 1 year, or it looks like we've got a couple of people, maybe 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10, or even someone who's been using it more than 10 years. Looks great. So I'm just going to let that poll run for another 3 seconds or so. Perfect, we got everyone in there. So just sharing those results on screen, it looks like most people are between one to 5 years. And then, like I said, we do have someone that's been using RoomKey for more than 10 years. So that's great to know. We've got wider range of people joining in for today. Hopefully, I can show you some new features inside RoomKey, or maybe teach you something new. If you have any questions as we go along, William will be overseeing the chat and questions, or Q&A section there. So if you do have any questions as we go through our presentation today, your microphones are muted, but please take advantage of using the Q&A button in the Zoom webinar. You can use that to ask questions. William will be able to type out answers, and anything that is not answered, we can also include in our Q&A session at the end. A couple more things about today's webinar. It is being recorded, and at the end of our presentation, those of you attending will receive a webinar survey. We ask you to provide any feedback. We also ask you if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics. We do appreciate that information, and we work really hard to deliver on those as well. And speaking of future presentations, I'm happy to announce that our next webinar next month in August will be covering the guest profile module inside RoomKey. Great. So with that out of the way, let's dive right into our topic for today and define what is the mobile check-in and checkout application in RoomKey. Well, it is actually a tool to help you manage all aspects of your guest's mobile experience. So it allows you to interact with your guests before their arrival through their mobile device. That could be a smartphone, a tablet, or iPad. It also helps you facilitate their departure at the end of their stay. Again, interacting using that mobile application rather than face-to-face kind of helps keep socially distant. It also aids in the convenience for your guests. Now, diving a little more into why this mobile check-in and checkout might be used, we'll start with the mobile check-in side. It does allow the guests to view their contact information, review their reservation details, policies, and provide a signature before their arrival. These are things that are usually dealt with at the time of check-in using a registration card. But with the mobile check-in application, it allows the guests to actually review and sign for that information before even arriving at the hotel. So it kind of gets those items out of the way without having to take up time at the front desk. Now, through the mobile application, the guests can also provide their estimated time of arrival. They can also add any notes or comments to their reservation, which appears as a reservation note inside RoomKey. And then you also have the option to enable a prompt to the guests to provide credit card information securely through the interface, as well as prompt them to provide picture ID, again, securely through that application. So I've got a short video clip here of 2 minutes that shows the mobile check-in experience from the guest point of view. I'm going to go ahead and launch this so we can see this live on screen. So the guest would receive an email, and a link in the email will take them directly to the app, and that's where we'll start with this video clip here. So this is the mobile check-in app. The guest would simply click check-in to begin the process. They can scroll through and review their contact information. They can even update it live inside the application, and that will automatically update to RoomKey as well. As they scroll a little further, they can continue to the next page, which is now going to allow them to review their reservation details. They can view their price summary and even a daily rate breakdown. And at the bottom of this page, they can click to accept terms and conditions. They can actually review that policy information and sign directly in the app. The next part is an optional part where you can have the guests review their balance and add their credit card details. This actually requires a credit card interface in order to securely collect that credit card data. Of course, if the guest does not want to provide their credit card data, they can select to use an alternate payment method where they would present that at check-in. Now, the next optional thing is where the guests can actually provide a picture of their ID and a picture of themselves. Of course, while they're taking that photo using their camera or mobile device, they can retake photos as much as they need and review that process there. Once they've selected once they've taken a picture of their ID and a picture of themselves, they can proceed, or of course they can opt out of that option and simply provide their ID at the front desk. The guest then has the ability to enter in their arrival or estimated time of arrival. They can use the time selector there, and they can also add in any additional comments or notes that will become a reservation note on their reservation in RoomKey. So that's the process end to end from the guest perspective, where they're able to provide that information ahead of time. From there, they would arrive at the hotel at their estimated time of arrival, and then they would proceed with check-in. Now, while the guest is in-house, towards the end of the guest stay on their day of departure, they can also use the mobile application to do their mobile checkout. So in much the same way that the guest received an email prior to their arrival at the hotel, they would receive an email prior to their departure. And in that email would be a link to take them to the mobile checkout application where they can view their bill. They can review and update their payment method on file if you are offering that credit card integration. They can also review policies and provide their signature authorizing for that payment or at the end of their stay. And then they have the ability to send a copy of the bill directly to themselves. So this whole process, we do have a video clip here that I'll show you. This whole process takes about 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes, just to see how quickly the guest is able to complete their checkout on their day of departure. So let's see this one here. This is just going to open up. Once again, we're here in the mobile checkout app. They'll simply select checkout to proceed. They can click to view their bill, which will show their itemized charges as well as their balance due. They can then select checkout. and they can enter their credit card information. Again, that would be using that credit card interface to securely communicate those credit card details, or they can opt to use the credit card already on file. And that would allow them to proceed using that payment method that was used at check-in. Now they can review that payment information, the policy information, and also provide their signature for payment. And once they have authorized that information, they can now send a copy of the bill to themselves. So it's the email address on file that will appear for them, or they can also edit that email address before sending. So very quick process. This represents a much quicker way for your guests to be able to complete some of the pre-arrival information before their check-in, as well as complete their checkout. Now, depending on if you would want to allow your guests to completely check out, that is also an option. We will now see how those mobile check-ins and checkouts do affect, or how that appears inside RoomKey as well. Great. So moving on to our next topic, of course, we've seen how the guests can use those two applications, the mobile check-in app and the mobile checkout app, to help facilitate or streamline some of their guest stay interaction there. But you'll also be able to benefit from that from the staff point of view, because the staff is going to be able to access things like your mobile check-in forms, checkout forms, as well as message notifications when a guest completes their mobile check-in or mobile checkout. So diving right into our topic for today, seeing how to use this mobile module. Now that we've seen what the guest interaction looks like, let's take a look at this inside a RoomKey PMS database. So I'm just going to open up my screen here. Oh, sorry, just before I do that, I just wanted to note some of the things that you'll notice whenever you sign up with RoomKey mobile check-in and checkout. One of the first things that you'll notice are new icons. We'll have a new column that will show off these icons for mobile check-in and mobile checkout. The other thing that you'll notice that is brand new are new reports that appear in the reports menu. That includes the ability to print mobile check-in and checkout forms, as well as accessing messaging logs. So here we go. Let's open up RoomKey on screen. Excellent. And here in my arrival screen, you'll notice that there is a new column that appears just to the right of the notes column. And that is a column indicating the mobile check-in icon here. So in this column, I can see exactly from my arrivals list of these arrivals for today, who has completed the mobile check-in application. Looks like 2 of them have not. They're missing from this column here. Now this column is brand new to the departure screen as well. So if I move over to the departure screen, this will now show me all the guests that have completed their mobile checkout. And it looks like all of the departure guests have completed their mobile checkout for today. So that is brand new. This column will also appear on the in-house screen. So will indicate your mobile checkouts on your in-house screen. And on the reservation screen, this will show that mobile check-in. So any arrivals or future arrivals that have completed the mobile check-in. Just heading back here to my arrivals screen, we'll take a look at some of these arrivals. So we've seen how the mobile check-in icon is brand new here. When a guest completes their mobile check-in, it actually creates a mobile check-in form, which is the new iteration of the reg card or registration card. So most hotels, whenever they have guests arriving, they might print out individual registration cards, which include the guest booking information, policy information for the hotel, and a line for the guest to sign. But with the mobile application, that is completely paperless. You can now access this directly from the icon itself. So with this icon here, inside the arrival screen, I can double click on that mobile check-in icon, and that's now going to generate the mobile check-in form for that guest. Let me just make this a little bit larger, and I'm going to zoom in to make this easier to see. There we go. So very similar to the registration card, it does review those reservation details and charge summary at the top. Here towards the bottom, we have those policies that were viewed during the mobile check-in experience for the guest. And I also have a copy of the guest signature that was provided during that mobile check-in process. And for each of these mobile check-in forms, RoomKey does track the IP address and date and time that that signature was provided. So you do have the ability to print or download a copy of this. Up in the top right-hand corner, you can click the print icon, and that will now print this document if you would like to have that filed and saved or filed at the front desk while the guest is in-house. If you prefer to save some paper, you can download and save a copy of this document to your computer or local shared drive, anything like that, to help cut down on that paper waste there as well. So that was a double click accessing that mobile check-in form. And if I go over to the departure screen, I can double click on the mobile checkout icon, and that will generate the mobile checkout form. Now for checkouts, this is the new iteration of what we consider our guest folio. So instead of giving a copy of the guest final bill at the end of their stay, when they complete mobile checkout, if the guest has sent it to themselves, this is what they would have sent to themselves. So you have a copy of that as well. Let me just make this a little bit larger, and we'll look at this together as well. Great. So again, very similar to our guest folio, where it reviews the guest contact information, reservation details, and payment information. So I scroll down a little bit here. It does also show the charges and balance owed. At the bottom, there is a salutation, but many guests will, or many properties will opt to have their policy information listed here, so that when the guest provides their signature, it does track alongside any policies that you would have on your guest folio as well. Once again, it does track the IP address and date and time that that signature was provided through that mobile application. And just like the mobile check-in form, you have the option to either print a physical copy, or you can download and save a copy to a local drive as well. So those are the two new forms that you can access for an individual. Now, many properties would want to be able to print these in multiple printings. So instead of just printing one at a time for all of today's departures and all of today's arrivals, what you can do is go directly to our report section. And inside the reservations group, we have two new reports that appear at the bottom of this list. So you have the ability to print mobile check-in forms, so multiple mobile check-in forms or checkout forms. This printing option is going to allow you to print by date range. So I could print all of today's mobile check-in forms and have that printed and off to the side, waiting for guests to arrive. And I can file those accordingly once the guests have checked in. You can also print them for past or future dates or larger date ranges. If you don't want to print them, but you do want to have them saved, you can export them directly to PDF. That will bypass the printing process, generate them as PDFs, and then you can just save those PDF wherever that is appropriate to. So that's some of the new reports that are available. We also have messaging logs that are appearing at the very bottom here. So you can actually track those emails that are being sent out to guests prior to their arrival or prior to their departure. Here in the messaging logs, this is going to track any of those emails that are sent out. And because this database is set up to automatically send those emails, I can see that a bunch of emails have already been sent out for today. These are copies of the guest's final bill. You can look at email logs for wider date ranges. Let me just open this up here and click search. Now, what I really like about these messaging logs is that if I scroll down here, you can see that not only does it track when the message was sent, when it was delivered, and it also tracks when the guest actually opens up the email and when they click on the link to then proceed with their mobile check-in or mobile checkout. Another advantage of these messaging logs is the ability to resend a document, or an email. So if the guest calls and says that they didn't receive their mobile check-in or mobile checkout, you can review this information in the messaging logs, and you can click on the resend button, which will allow you to resend it. It will also preview the email address of the recipient. So if you're speaking to the guest on the telephone, you can reconfirm what their email address is and proceed from there. Now, another feature here, if the email is not successfully delivered, in this case, I have an example of an email that did bounce. It will let you know the reason for failure. So in the bottom left-hand corner here, it lets me know why that email did not go through. It lets me know that the email or mailbox is unavailable. If I click on that resend button, that's going to show me what email address is on file, and certainly that looks like an invalid email address. So I might want to follow up with the guest in another method, or perhaps expect them to arrive as a normal check-in without completing the mobile check-in application. So great way to kind of manage those emails that are being sent out and received by the guests, and making sure that they are able to accept those. And like I said, you can even track when they open the email and when they click on the link using this messaging log. So once again, that was brand new from the reports menu, and it appears right at the bottom there, called messaging logs. Now, a few more features of the mobile check-in and mobile checkout. Here I have, just heading back to my arrivals, I have a guest that has completed their mobile check-in. The front desk team would receive a notification anytime a guest does complete their mobile check-in. Some of the information that does appear here will appear in the messaging center. So from the operations menu, message center is right at the bottom here. And within the My Tasks section, this will now show a list of any notifications that are received. So this will send out a notification, or you will receive a notification anytime someone completes a mobile check-in form or checkout. Here I'm going to take a look at the mobile checkout notification. I'll just double click on one of those notifications, and I can see information about when the guest completed the mobile checkout and any information regarding payments. So in this case, as part of the guest completing their mobile checkout form or mobile checkout, they've agreed to use the payment method on file. So because everyone on shift, or everyone at the front desk, would receive this notification, I can also track when the notification is set as complete. So I can mark this task as complete myself. I can even add a note whenever I'm completing that task. So I might say, just saying that the guest has actually left the building, they're fully checked out. I maybe saw them leave through the lobby or anything like that. I can select OK, and that's now going to complete the task. It's going to leave my message on file as well. So anyone else who might be looking at this task, they would see my comments. When I close that, that task is now marked as complete. It has a green check mark next to it. So anyone else who is receiving these mobile notifications, they would see the ones that have already been completed. They can review those if they need to, or they can move on to the next one and complete those. Now you can control who receives these types of mobile notifications. Controlling these notifications is controlled by the user ID. So you can actually pick and choose who would receive these types of notifications. So I'm going to show you how you can control that from the Clerks module. I'm going to close out of the Message Center. Now, there's a lot more features available in the Message Center, and I just wanted to do a quick plug for a webinar that we did earlier this year that covers clerks and communication inside RoomKey PMS. I do recommend checking out that webinar. I can't remember if it was from February or March, but I do recommend checking out that webinar if you'd like to learn more about using the Message Center to communicate with staff. But we're going to jump along here and go directly to the Clerks module, and I'll show you how you can add or control who sees those mobile notifications. So it's actually controlled from the Departments tab here in the Clerks module. I'm going to click on Departments. And when you sign up with RoomKey PMS mobile check-in and checkout, a new department is automatically created for you called pre-arrival notifications. This department will have all of your active users automatically assigned. So I can see all of those users listed in the left-hand list. It will automatically add all of those active users. So if you do have some users who should not receive those mobile check-in notifications, maybe housekeepers or accountants don't need to see those notifications each and every time, you can select their clerk ID on the left-hand side and use the black arrow to remove those clerk IDs. So it'll simply remove those clerk IDs so that they don't receive those messages each and every time they log into RoomKey. Of course, if you do have a new user, or if you do have some users that you want to make sure that they receive those notifications, you'll look for their clerk ID on the right-hand side, select and use the black arrow to move that clerk ID over. So I'll just move those 3 back over there. Once you are done customizing who is part of this pre-arrival notifications group, you can select OK to save your changes. So the next time that the user logs into RoomKey, they would receive a pop-up notification on screen letting them know that they have messages or unread messages. So really helpful to be able to control that communication anytime someone completes a mobile check-in or a mobile checkout. Now, going back to our guests here in the arrival screen, we know that this guest has completed their mobile check-in. We already have their mobile check-in form. The next thing, as soon as the guest arrives, we can then proceed with checking them in just like a normal check-in. So you can click the check-in button or F5 on your keyboard. You can include any available credit if your property authorizes for incidentals. And you can select check-in. Any notes on file will always pop up as well. So if the guest has wanted to provide an alternate form of payment at check-in, if they have any pre-arrival notifications, and of course, if they have any instructions with regards to their booking. So it looks like this guest has direct billing to a city ledger account. So very similar to the standard way that you are used to using the check-in process there. Now, a variation that we do have includes when a guest provides a photo ID. So this guest here, Mr. Luke Dinsmore, he did provide a photo as part of his mobile check-in. So he completed the mobile check-in. I can see the icon here on his reservation. And I can also see a new camera icon that appears. This appears anytime that a guest completes their photo online with their photo ID and selfie. So I can actually click on this to view the photos that the guest provided. I can review the information for this guest, Luke Dinsmore, and I can either accept or delete the ID. Now, these photos will show up as well as part of the check-in process. So instead of looking at the photo manually, when I select the check-in button or F5 on my keyboard, those photos will automatically pop up as well. So it gives me the opportunity to verify the guest ID as well as the credit card that they would provide at check-in. So I can accept that ID and then once again, make sure I'm authorizing for incidentals and complete that check-in. So pretty quick process there. It just helps me eliminate the need for printing or manually printing registration cards and passing a lot of information back and forth with the guests because they've already completed those details ahead of time. Now, at the end of the guest stay, those departures, these guests that have completed their mobile checkout, I would be able to see, of course, when they completed that mobile checkout. That information appears as a reservation note on their actual reservation. And I can simply proceed with a checkout just the same way that you would normally. So click the checkout button or F6 on your keyboard. These charges for this guest are actually going to a City Ledger account, so I can simply select checkout. Great. Let me just head back to my departure screen here. Now, if the guest has provided a picture ID at the time of check-in as part of their mobile check-in experience, that ID will remain on file while the guest is in-house. So I have this guest here, this Lisa Hawley. I can see her photos whenever it pulls up, and of course, accept those ID. She is checking out today and she has completed her mobile checkout form. So I can go through and check out this guest. Once again, just checking out using the credit card on file. And now that this guest has checked out, when I take a look at their reservation here in the checked out screen, you'll notice that they have still have their mobile checkout form available to review, but their photos have automatically been deleted. So that photo icon is no longer appearing on screen. So now we've seen how the guest would interact with the mobile check-in and checkout. We've seen how the staff are able to be notified when a guest completes their mobile check-in or checkout, and how that helps them expedite some of those check-in and checkout procedures. I want to now show you how you can control the features of the mobile application, how you can control the emails that are being sent out to arriving guests and departing guests, and how you can even control some of the branding and logo information that appears on the mobile applications. So all of that is controlled from a new module called Mobile. It appears in the system configuration menu at the very top here. Now, if you've signed up with RoomKey, but you do not have access to this mobile module, it might be grayed out or it might not appear in this menu at all. You will need to give yourself permission to access it. So if you cannot click on the mobile module here, you're going to go to Clerks and look at the permission settings for your clerk ID. Here on the Permissions tab, in the System Configuration menu, you should see a new permission at the very bottom called Mobile. It's permission 2310. If you do not see this permission on the left-hand side, you'll go to the right-hand side, System Configuration, and it usually appears towards the bottom. You can then give that permission to your clerk ID or have someone give that permission to you through their clerk ID as well. Now, once you have given yourself the permission to access the mobile module, you will need to log out and log back into RoomKey for that new permission setting to take effect. So I already have access to the mobile module. Let's go ahead and open it up from System Configuration and Mobile. So this module opens up on screen as a pop-up, just like many of our other modules we've seen inside RoomKey. So you can click and move this around as needed. I'm just going to keep it in the center here. The mobile module is divided into a series of tabs, starting with the check-in tab, checkout tab, and theme. I like to jump ahead to the theme right away because this is the tab that allows you to customize the look or branding that appears on the mobile application for your guests. Here you can add in a logo for your hotel. You can even add a name that appears. You can add your hotel name or a branding or line item that would appear below the logo. To make any changes here, you would select the Modify button. You can use the Load Logo or Clear Logo buttons at the bottom to manage your logo. Of course, a preview of that will appear on screen here as well. You can even change the border color that appears on the mobile application to match your branding. When you click on this color icon, you can select from pre-existing colors, or you can use the Define Custom Colors to then enter in the RGB or Hue Sat Lume figures here as well. So this one is a custom color that we had to match the branding for our RoomKey PMS hotel. Once you've made your changes here to the theme, you want to select the Save button on the right-hand side to save those changes. That will automatically update the system. There's no more changes that need to be made. All guests will automatically see those changes right away. So once you've set up your theme, the next thing I would recommend is to go to your check-in tab here, and you'll notice that we have a series of sub-tabs that we can use to configure the application, customize the email, and we can even integrate with credit cards or identification there. So here on the Configuration tab, I'm going to click the Modify button on the right-hand side, and this allows you to now make changes to any of the information in the configuration tools. Now, as you go through and make changes to your configuration, there is a URL that appears at the top of this tab. This would take you to a preview of the mobile check-in app for your guests. So you can click on this link, and I'm just going to bring this over onto our screen here where you can see what that looks like. This actually loads a preview of the mobile check-in app. So as you make changes, if you make any changes to your verbiage or policy information, you can use that URL to review those changes in the live application. Just going to close that there. You can also use the copy icon if you wanted to copy and paste that into a separate browser, or maybe send that link off to someone else to preview that at their convenience. So below the URL information, the first thing that you're able to customize are the hotel policies. Now, by default, RoomKey will allow you to use any notes that currently exist on your registration card. But if you'd like to customize your policy information for your mobile check-in guests, you can use the custom toggle and then type in any information as needed here. Next to the hotel policy information is a check-in time setting. Now this will default to your standard check-in time for the hotel. But if you'd like to give a custom check-in time for your mobile check-in guests, you can modify this. This would display during the mobile check-in process when the guest enters in or is prompted to enter in their estimated time of arrival. They would see this time listed right below that field. Below the hotel policy information, we also have a space for you to give any hotel arrival instructions. These instructions appear at the end of the mobile check-in process. So you can give your guests notes about how to arrive, if you've got any special check-in procedures you'd like them to follow. If you have any COVID procedures still in place, you can also reiterate that here. And I also like to note that you can also include URLs or hyperlinks to secondary websites. So once the guest has completed their mobile check-in, you might include a link back to the hotel website or maybe to activity information around the surrounding area from your hotel. So a couple of ideas are available to you there when you are entering in your hotel arrival instructions as well. Now at the bottom, you can also include a footer. So as the guest goes through their mobile check-in experience, if they have any questions, at the bottom, there is a footer space where you can tell them to contact or give them contact information to reach out to the hotel directly if they have any questions as they're going through that procedure. Now at the very bottom, we have some optional fields that you can include for your guests and help customize their mobile check-in experience. You can choose to show or hide the daily rate information. You can prompt your online guests to opt in to marketing campaigns so that they would receive any communication from your marketing department about upcoming sales or promotions. You can also prompt them to provide a loyalty number if you're tracking that information in RoomKey. And by default, we do recommend that you require a signature. This setting is going to ensure that when the guest views your hotel policies, they are prompted or required to provide their signature at the same time to acknowledge those policies. Lastly, you can also include line items for collecting vehicle information. This information, once collected as part of the profile review, will automatically appear on the guest info for that guest themselves. So again, lots of customization that you can do on this configuration tab that would appear for your guests as they go through that mobile check-in experience. So you want to select save on the right-hand side to save any of those changes. Or if you don't want to save them, just go ahead and hit cancel. And that will revert back to those previous settings. Moving on to the next item is the ability to customize the check-in email. So this is the pre-arrival email that the guest would receive just before their arrival or check-in at the hotel. Just like we saw with the configuration tab, I'm going to click modify off to the right-hand side. So that allows me to make changes to any of these fields. I can customize what the email appears as. So the from address or reply to information. I can even include a BCC email when those are being automatically sent out. And I can customize the subject line. At the very bottom here, this is where I can actually schedule the delivery and manage how those are being sent out to the guests. I could opt to manual send only. That means that it would be a requirement of the front desk to manually send those out to the arrivals for the day or the next day. I prefer to recommend this second option here to send the pre-arrival email on the day of arrival. I can even specify what time I want those to be sent out. Or if I wanted to send it out a day or 2 days earlier, I can choose a number of days ahead of time and again, customize when that will be sent out. So once again, any changes you make here, you want to select save in order to save those changes. Now, this database is set up to use both the mobile check-in and mobile checkout. If you did not want to use one or the other, you can remove this check mark it says check-in email. If you do not want to use the mobile check-in, or you don't want the guests to use mobile check-in, you would remove this check mark, and that will disable those emails. They will no longer be sent out to your arrival guests until you recheck that checkbox there. So I don't want to make any changes here. I'm pretty happy with that, how that's set up. I'm just going to hit cancel on the side there. Now, before we move on from the emails, I just wanted to also note that we do have the ability to set up exclusion rules for our check-in emails. These exclusion rules may be applied if there are certain types of guests that you do not want to be completing the mobile check-in. So the example here, I have actually excluded certain client types. On the client types tab, you could exclude guests by market segment, or you can exclude guests by the type of rate that they book here on the rates tab. Back here on the client types tab, I can see that OTA prepaid guests, any guests that are booked through an online travel agent that is prepaid directly to the travel agent, they are excluded from these types of pre-arrival emails. Of course, if you want to remove that exclusion, you would select modify on the right-hand side, remove the check mark or add the check mark if needed, and select save on the right-hand side in order to save those changes. So you can be very specific about who receives these types of mobile check-in emails and who has the ability to go through that mobile check-in process. Now, moving on to the next one, credit card integration. In order to collect guest credit card information as part of mobile check-in, you will need to have an existing credit card integration. If you don't have a credit card interface integrated with RoomKey, what you'll see here on the CC integration tab is an advertisement for our payments product. This database is a test database, so there's no credit card integration, and that's why it's showing up with this advertisement. So you will need to have a credit card interface in order to collect guest credit card details securely using the mobile check-in app. Next is the identification option. This is the tool that prompts the guest to provide a picture of their ID and take a selfie. They can enable or disable this information using the modify button on the right-hand side. And we can see how you can enable this, or if you don't want to prompt guests to provide their ID, you can remove that check mark, and that will eliminate that step from the mobile check-in procedure. Of course, if you do want to continue to have them provide their ID, you can include some custom identification instructions here where you're telling them that to use the buttons, to take those photos. You can even include a disclaimer letting them know that the photos are permanently deleted automatically at the time of their checkout. Of course, guests will always have the option to opt out, and that's where you can include messaging letting them know that they will need to provide a piece of ID at check-in in order to receive their keys. So that is the setup for the check-in side of things. Now we can switch gears a little bit and take a look at the checkout configuration. Some of these are going to look pretty familiar. For the checkout or mobile checkout experience for the guest, we do have a configuration tab as well. Here, I'm just going to click the modify button. And just like we saw with the mobile check-in, as I go through and make changes, I have the link or URL at the very top of this page where I can then double check my work or see what those updates look like on the live application. Starting out again with a checkout message, RoomKey will automatically allow you to use the notes that are already updated or added to your guest folio. You can use those same notes here as a checkout message for your guests, or you can use the custom toggle to then type in a custom message for your guests. This messaging is what will appear on their mobile checkout form or their new iteration of their folio. Now, we also have a checkout time setting. This setting does not appear for the guest going through the mobile checkout app, but what it can be used for is to allow a bit of a grace period for guests to complete their mobile checkout in and around the actual checkout time. So this is set quite high, but it will automatically default to your regular checkout time. So if your property's checkout time is 11 a.m., this setting will automatically display 11 a.m. But that means that guests that might want to check out at 11:01, when they use the application, they'll be notified that the checkout time has now passed. If you want to allow a little bit of grace period for those guests checking out right at or just after 11 a.m., I do recommend that you increase this by 1 hour. That will allow guests to go through the mobile checkout experience. It does not guarantee them a late checkout, and they do not see this time displayed at any time, but it does give them a little bit of grace period to complete the process on their own from their guest room to help expedite that checkout process for them. Now, you can also customize some of the messaging that the guest would see as they go through the mobile checkout experience. You can prompt them to view their charges on their bill, and you can also explain any policies that you have surrounding alternate payment methods. And we do have that footer option at the bottom as well. Now, for optional fields at the very bottom here, I do recommend that you require a signature. That is the prompt that forces the guest to provide a signature when they are signing and reviewing their booking or payment policies. Some other optional fields here allow you to show or hide adjustments on the guest folio or show and hide transfers. My recommendation is to show adjustments, but to not show transfers. That makes it really easy to display that information for the guest. Now, again, you're going to click Save on the right-hand side in order to save any of those changes, or cancel to revert back to those original settings. Now, very similar to the check-in email, you do have a checkout email. And I'm going to click Modify once again on the right-hand side just to show some of this navigation here. Just like the mobile check-in emails, you can customize the from name, you can add a BCC and customize the subject line. But for the checkout email, we are a little more strict about how the scheduled delivery is going to be sent out. Either you opt to manually send only, or my recommendation is to use the day of departure setting. That will automatically send out the mobile checkout email to all departing guests automatically at midnight. So when the date changes from one day to the next, that is the setting that would automatically send off those departure emails. Now, you can also customize how the guest would receive their copy of their final bill or mobile checkout form. If you want to use the manual send only, the guest will not be able to send it to themselves as part of the mobile checkout process. Your staff at the front desk would be required to manually send those out to all departing guests. I like to recommend the completion of mobile checkout setting here. That way, the guest has the ability to send a copy of their bill to themselves. They can even send it to a unique email address if needed. So if they needed to change it to their business address, they can do that directly in the app themselves without having to have the front desk update that information. Thanks. So again, I'm just going to save those changes there. And I just want to make one other note about exclusion rules. Exclusion rules for the mobile checkout emails are a little bit different than what we saw for the mobile check-in. Instead of being able to customize these exclusions, it is dependent upon whether or not you have a credit card integration. So if you do not have a credit card integration used with the mobile check-in and checkout, any guests that have that are paying by cash, or if they have a balance on file, they would not receive a mobile checkout email. They would come down to the front desk and check out like a normal guest. Likewise, any guests that are using split room charges equally between share guests, or if they are using the routing tab on their reservation to route charges, those guests would not receive a copy of the mobile checkout email. If a guest has a credit balance, meaning that you owe money back to the guest, they would not receive a mobile checkout email. They would have to, all of these types of guests would need to come to the front desk. Now, if you are using a credit card integration, and it is enabled, the only type of guests that would not receive a mobile checkout email are those guests that have a credit balance on file, meaning you owe money back to them. They would still be required to come down to the front desk so you can return that money to them or refund that money in an appropriate manner, whether it's to the payment method originally used or if you're issuing a check directly from the accounting team. So just a couple things to keep in mind with regards to those exclusion rules, specifically for the mobile checkout. Now, again, if you are using an credit card interface, you'll be able to view the credit card integration here. Otherwise, you'll simply see that advertisement for RoomKey PMS payments. So that is an overview of the mobile module itself. This is the tool that we use to control all of those settings that the guest would see as they go through the mobile check-in or checkout process, and how we can control some of those settings for the mobile checkout experience itself. So just heading back to our presentation, now that we've seen how you can use the mobile module inside RoomKey, about talking about when you can start using the module itself, we have this module launched for all of our clients that use RoomKey. So I do encourage you to contact our inside sales account manager, Margot. I have her contact information here, and I'll include it in my follow-up email. Just a little reminder that you will need to have a credit card interface if you want to collect guest credit card information. But if you don't have that interface, if you just want to use it for the ease of checking in and checking out guests, you can still use the mobile check-in and checkout without a credit card interface. So to summarize our presentation for today, RoomKey PMS mobile check-in and checkout allows you to securely collect guest information, credit card details, all while supporting the efficient and socially distant front desk procedures. I'm going to open it up to some Q&A for us today. Oh, and it looks like all of our questions have been answered. Thank you so much, William, for being so diligent and attentive in that Q&A section. That looks great. Well, everyone, I appreciate you attending today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar, and stay tuned if you'd like to review our webinar at any time. We will be having this recording loaded up to our website within about 24 hours. So you'll receive a notification when that becomes available on our support website. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day.